Hello friends and welcome. Today I wanted to share a new Warlock build that feels honestly pretty busted to me. Maybe it's just people not expecting it, not being used to it, not knowing how to deal with it, but right now it feels really strong in the laning stage, and that's always kind of been Warlock's most awkward spot. I feel like he's known to be very strong in the mid to late game with his team fighting abilities, but his early game was kind of his weak point. Now that feels really strong, and so you just kind of wreck people in the laning stage. I've never been richer as a Warlock. I'm so rich in these games, and then mid to late game, I mean, you just go back to regular Warlock things. The new build revolves around the Fatal Bonds change, which is that whenever a unit affected by Fatal Bonds dies, it will spawn an imp, which is based on the level of Fatal Bonds, which I see is not on the skill description, but it's in the patch. I'll pop it up here. Now, these imps just make Fatal Bonds really effective. I kind of have to show you some math to get the point across. I've got this bright white Excel sheet to explain the changes to Fatal Bonds. This is the first creep wave, their health total, and they're going to die. They're going to kill each other, and so what I've been doing is I Fatal Bonds the first creep wave, all 4 creeps, to the 2 enemy heroes if possible, at least 1 hero. And that means when the creep wave dies, this is how much damage is going to be shared to the enemy heroes. But you're never going to quite get this much because since we're binding all the creeps together, they're taking damage from each other from your Fatal Bonds, which is going to reduce the total damage out that you're going to do. But in this time, you can actually harass the enemy heroes as well. So you're going to get less than this, but if you're harassing, it's not the worst figure in the world. But let's go with 150 to 200 damage. That's already really good harass. But doesn't even include the new imps. So when the imps, or when a unit dies that is affected by Fatal Bonds, it spawns an imp based on the level of Fatal Bonds and if you have a shard, so it can go up to 5 levels. This is the explosion damage they will do at each level, and it's AoE. So they will prioritize enemy heroes who are affected by Fatal Bonds. It'll run up to them and explode. If it just hits one hero, then it's going to do 30 damage and then share out 3.6 to all the other units. But a lot of times the creep waves are right next to each other, and enemy melee heroes or ranged heroes who are out of position, what happens a lot in lower brackets, right? They're all next to each other, which means the one explosion actually hits multiple other creeps and or heroes, which will then proc multiple instances of this shared damage to share out to all the rest of the bonded units. So what it ends up coming down to is that every cast of Fatal Bonds frequently does a range of damage, but at minimum 100 to 150, and at maximum 300 plus damage. And that is a ton for a level 1 spell that you're just going to use again on the next wave. Wait, Zach, if I Fatal Bonds the creep wave, that means it's going to push out our lane. Great observation, but it doesn't matter. So if you notice, the average hard camp also has about 1800 HP on average. Some camps have more or less than that. So after you shove out your lane, you're just going to do a hard camp pull. Don't block it, let it spawn. In fact, use a sentry to preemptively unblock your small camp so you have another pull option. But if your lane shoves out, do a hard camp pull. That means when the enemy heroes come to contest, maybe they drag their creep wave over as well, you're gonna just Fatal Bonds them again. Fatal Bonds them to this hard camp and to other creeps that they've brought in as well. And now there's even a higher damage potential to give to them because we have this 1800 HP from the hard camp, which usually there's only 2 to 3 of the creeps, assuming nothing's been summoned, and then 1 other creep, 2 heroes, right? There's so much potential here. Throw out the spells, hit the hard camp, hit the stuff. When units die, imps are going to pop up and explode to help secure you the pull. So you're actually really good at fighting over these pulls now with this Fatal Bonds damage. So it doesn't matter if you're shoving out the lane. We're just going to commit to it. Keep casting Fatal Bonds. Keep casting Upheaval potentially if that's what you chose to skill at the level 2, level 4. All of it combines really well to fight over here. Shove it all the way in. If you haven't killed them already, you've damaged them so much that you can now leave your carry there and go do that pull on the small camp that we talked about, preemptively unblocking. Make sure that's available. So between shoving the lane under the tower and then doing a small pull, you have pretty much reset your equilibrium right back in front of your tower, and it doesn't matter because we're just going to do it again. Once the enemy heroes walk up, we're going to Fatal Bond and we're going to shove the lane out again, and we're just going to repeat this cycle. So there's a lot of explanation on Fatal Bonds, but it is key to this new build. The imps exploding is a new thing. And because of that, that's why I've been maxing out first, to get more damage from the imps and more shared damage, as well as a lower cooldown on this ability. It's also now my farming tool, so I'm not just using it to win the lane and using it in fights. When I have nothing to do, I stack camps and I Fatal Bonds it, and I use upheaval to farm it. Or there's an empty lane, and I use Fatal Bonds to farm that wave, because as I hit creeps, right, they all die, they spawn imps, they finish pushing the wave, and then those imps that spawn as that wave dies will actually follow through. Actually, they kind of like chase whatever, but often they just walk down the lane, and then they damage the next creep wave. So even if I can't go there, they AoE explode on the next creep wave, which helps my creeps to continue shoving in to then go like pressure the enemy's towers. At level 2, you can take a point in Shadow Word, especially if the enemy has a lot of harass potential, or maybe you just don't have a lot of kill potential. Maybe they are ranged heroes with escapes that upheaval would not be good against. Then you can skip upheaval for now. But many heroes, or many lanes, you know, there's at least 2 heroes, and one of them is usually weak to upheaval. So after getting a lot of harass, I kind of judge it, right? I look how much kill potential we have, how much damage I've dealt, and I hold this point. If I feel I need the heal, I take it. If not, I often take a point in upheaval to go for a kill. And at level 4, if I feel like, hey, it's working, upheaval's really effective, I'm just gonna get more points in it and skip Shadow Word, because I don't need Shadow Word, I have Shadow Word at home. But if I am gonna take a point in it, I don't really mind. I'll take 1 point for the laning stage and, you know, just general regen, but I do like to max upheaval after that to get the levels higher, because we are going to build the shard pretty quickly. So I want upheaval to last as long as possible, to spawn more imps. I'll get into that more in a little bit, but I do like maxing this ability next and then take Shadow Word at the end. So this is a more aggressive build as opposed to just like general healing, which Warlock has typically done. And by the way, if you want to play like old Warlock style, you're into some like counter matchup Venomancer, they're just doing a bunch of harass damage, feel free to take 2 points in like Shadow Word early. I haven't had to do this myself yet. I just keep maxing Fatal Bonds to test how good it is, and it just keeps working. But if you feel like you need to do this, I think it's okay. And then just like max Fatal Bonds after. You'll still get it pretty early here at like level 8. This will allow you to like participate pretty early and like farm on your own, just like casting Fatal Bonds on creep waves and stacked camps. We're going to take the ult any chance we get. And then in terms of talents, there are a couple choices here. I have defaulted to the right side, but you can argue for the left side. So like at level 10, I think Upheaval Radius is great if Upheaval is very effective. Against a lot of melee heroes, for example, who have no mobility, and you're just going to like kite them using Upheaval, then I think this talent is great. And in that case, I'm going to delay it. I'm going to max Upheaval first and then take the talent. Because Upheaval, every time you level it up, also gains 50 radius, but also gets other benefits. So 75 radius is obviously bigger than 50, but you're not getting all these extra benefits. So max Upheaval first before taking the talent if you're going to take Upheaval Radius. But if you're taking Fatal Bonds damage, then we already have Fatal Bonds maxed at this point. Then you can take it at level 10, and then level 11 finish Upheaval. At level 15, I like the Upheaval attack speed because it'll work on your golems. It kind of works on the imps when they hit buildings, and I'm just not really playing for the heal, so I'm not really taking it. But if you think the heal is really good, and like I said, that build isn't nerfed, this one is just buffed. If you feel like you just need to provide heals for your team, then I think this is fine, and then you might even combo that with the left talent for 450 AoE Shadow Word. But if you're not doing that, then the Golem on death is quite nice. It'll punish people who are jumping you and killing you. It will spawn a Golem. It'll give you something to do while you're dead. You can control the Golem, but the Golems are powerful. So I do like this talent. And then at 25, you just pick what are your golems taking more damage from, so left or right, it's up to you. For your items, because we're possibly skipping Shadow Word, I've been grabbing 2 sets of Tangos. If you know you're going to get Shadow Word, then you can probably replace this for more mana regen, since Shadow Word will do the healing for you. Blood Grenade, so hang on to this. Later when you use it, you're going to share that extra damage out with Fatal Bonds, but it's also like part of that finishing kill combo. Harass with a Q, and then you decide you can go for it. So you throw the Blood Grenade and start casting Upheaval for tons of slows and let your carry finish up the damage. Plus you're also doing a bit of damage from Upheaval, from Blood Grenade, which will then also share through the Fatal Bond, so just combos really well. And if you don't need it, then you just kind of like hang on to it, get a bit of extra health in the meantime. Iron Branches to round out your right-clicking damage. Sentry, I've been using this to unblock my small camp to make sure I can pull after shoving the lane out. And then a stick, if it's a good stick game. If not, Sage's Mask, seems good to me. Will give you some extra mana regen. Don't be afraid to buy some Clarities and Mangoes. I've had to buy it as I've been spamming out Fatal Bonds. I do like early raindrops, and sometimes I even get like a casual Sage's Mask, especially if I know I'm going to like build something that's going to use it later on. Yeah, mana regen in the early game, generally good. Finish out your boots, your wand. From here, I like to get the arcane boots because I am spamming out spells a lot, so mana regen helps my team when we group up. I am occasionally, I'm not sure if I'm griefing or not. I think it's kind of good. The Shadow Amulet, I'm not even planning to get a Glimmer Cape because Shadow Amulet lasts forever. And you might be thinking, oh, it's going to help us cast Upheaval. That's true. I've been ratting with Shadow Amulet. So if your team is very active, I don't think you need to do this. But in your pubs, if the game's very slow and you need to make space, I've been getting Shadow Amulet, and I've been hiding in the lanes, like in the trees, just Shadow Amuleted, and then when creep waves spawn, if I feel safe enough, I cast Fatal Bonds on them, and then like I kill them with Upheaval, or if I don't feel safe, I just cast Upheaval, and the creeps are so slow, the imps spawn, it kills the whole creep wave. You don't even show on the wave unless people are paying attention to the minimap. They might see the imps spawn, but they explode right away, so it's pretty hard to catch, and I've just been ratting like that, getting a ton of farm. When there's no creep waves, I like Fatal Bonds, jungle camps, and farm that. So it's been pretty good, but if your team is all together and you're winning, you don't really need it because people can't target you anyways because they're just dying. But if you need it, you can get it. And oftentimes, the reason I'm talking about it now before even talking about the shard, because I have been so rich in these games from getting so many kills and then farming camps with Q and E that I have more gold than I need at 15 minutes for the Aghanim shard. So I buy an early Shadow Amulet. But at 15 minutes, I do try to get the Aghanim shard because I'm telling you guys, these imps are busted. So I want more imps. I want them to be stronger, and that's what the Aghanim Shard does. It makes the imps one level higher, and will now start spawning them on Upheaval. Solar Crest is also a pretty good item to get really early. You can use it on your golems. The golems are quite powerful. Plus, if you take that 15 talent, you're like doubling up Solar Crest plus your talent. You can also use it on your allies as well. It's just, generally good item, and it'll give you some mana regen, which we like. Glimmer, still a good item. Any auras are very nice because as you're sitting there casting Upheaval, you can't really use too many active spells. So some of these auras that you can just activate before using Upheaval, or maybe you have or have not used it, but they just provide a benefit while you don't have to do anything. Those are quite nice. If you want to get a better ultimate, then Ags or Refresher, if not both, are good. I haven't decided which one first is better. Ags is easier on your mana, but actually double Fatal Bonds is also extremely powerful. So I think it kind of comes down to what you need more and how much your team offers. Aghanim is going to be easier, I think, on the build-up and general use, but I think there's probably some worlds where Refresher Orb double Fatal Bonds is pretty good. Usual support items are also totally fine, by the way, like Force Staff. And then I think Veil could have some good potential comboing with Fatal Bonds, plus any magic damage your team has, lots of AoE damage. And if you're going for a heal build with the AoE and all that, then I think Holy Locket is going to be fine. But I haven't really been doing that. Like I said, I'm trying out this new Fatal Bond stuff, and it's working really well. Neutral items, I just take anything that helps with mana or gives me cast range, and then besides that, just general survivability or cooldown reduction. A couple random tips that might help you: if you can use Fatal Bonds before casting your ult in big fights, that is ideal, but do not sweat it. Sometimes the ultimate, the stun, has to come out really quickly as a counter initiate, and that's the most important thing you can do, more so than Fatal Bonds, so do whatever you need to. Upheaval lingers for 3 seconds, which is pretty absurd. This is the most useful in early fights, especially going for kills. Cast Upheaval, get that slow going, but when it looks like they're about to get out of range of Upheaval and you still need to do more damage to finish up the kill, stop Upheaval and just go attack. They will still be slowed for 3 seconds after you stop channeling, which will give you time to close the distance and get in a couple auto attacks. I don't fully know how I feel about this. It's kind of bug abuse, kind of like a high skill thing, I don't know, but if you cast Chaotic Offering with an Aghanims, and then once it goes on cooldown, but before the golems actually spawn, if you backpack your Aghanims, you will get 2 full value golems instead of the reduced golems from the Aghanims. So it kind of looks like this, where these are supposed to be 900 health golems with 80 damage and all that, but instead we have the full health ones, 1400 and 110, 2 of them. If you do it too slow and one golem spawns and then you backpack it, you'll get 1 reduced golem and 1 full health golem, which is still technically better. Like I said, I don't know. It's probably not really how that ability is supposed to work, so it's kind of like technically bug abuse, but it is a way to get even more out of Warlock. I have done it a couple times, I'm not gonna lie, but I also forget to do it quite a lot, and I think it's fine. So I'll leave it up to you guys, but now you know. Oh, and by the way, after you win like some early team fights with the Golem, make sure to use it to either like push the lane or go farm jungle camps. The Golem is really strong. So yeah, that's kind of it. Just press Q on people and win. I haven't tried this against a lane that has a ton of dispels. I did play 4 Warlock against Slark, and I still felt like this build was perfectly fine. We crushed him, but I'm sure into like Abaddon or LC, where they don't take damage when using their dispels, unlike Slark, I was still getting some value out of it in that way by forcing him to use it early. I don't know, it might still be okay. They're gonna have to use mana. I think you can sustain the mana like trading more than they can, and eventually they run out and you'll get your Fatal Bonds damage in. But against those heroes, if you want to try a different build to start, like we talked about some of the variations, I think that's okay. But I think these early Fatal Bond points are really powerful right now, so that's how I'm gonna be playing Warlock. And if you want to see that, drop by the streams. I've been doing it a ton, it's a lot of fun. Or try it yourselves and let me know how it's going. And by the way, if you want to see this guide, I see people ask about it. It is in the description. I know the search feature, I do publish these. I know the search feature is not that great in Dota sometimes. So I do link it in the description. You just have to click there, follow, like, subscribe or whatever, and it should pop up in your guide. So thank you for watching. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in another video.